Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling. Today's topic of the day is going to be about common opponents. What I mean by that is wrestlers who have faced each other on certainly more than one occasion, maybe more than twice, maybe more than thrice. Who knows? Multiple occasions. I'm going to go down a list of not every single pairing here that there's known to mankind, but enough that I've seen over the 30 years I've been watching wrestling, and some of my favorites, and I probably won't talk about the not-so-good ones because there's just too many good ones to go over, so let's just get right into it, shall we? Let's start with some from the 80s here, and then we'll get into some later years as time goes on. I wanted to start with two tag teams that were constantly at each other's throats in 1989. I'm talking about the Rockers versus the Brainbusters. Shawn and Marty versus Arn and Tully. Now, the Brainbusters were part of the original Four Horsemen in Jim Crockett Promotions, along with Ric Flair, Barry Windham, and their manager J.J. Dillon. So, the Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard made their way to the World Wrestling Federation in late 1988 under the tutelage of Bobby the Brain Heenan, so they automatically became members of the Heenan family. And the Brainbusters were known for their technical prowess. Arn is so great in everything he does, technically. He's very technically sound, Arn Anderson is, and he was. He's way past his prime now, so you won't see that. But in his heyday, man, could he deliver the best spine buster that anyone's ever delivered. That's why they call it the Double-A Spine Buster. And he always had that grizzled veteran aura about him. He had a very hairy chest, and he wasn't the skinniest guy. He was a little bit pudgy there, but that's not the worst thing in the world. He had a very... He was kind of like, he was a very brawny physique, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. Tully was more of a suave ladies' man type, especially in his Four Horsemen days. They didn't really show much personality, though. By the time they got to the World Wrestling Federation, they had Bobby Heenan doing all their talking for them. So, while they were off the mic for the most part, what they showcased best was in the ring. So they go against Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. I don't believe there was ever a pay-per-view that they competed on against one another. I would venture to say Survivor Series 88, but that was the giant 10-team elimination match. Team Demolition and Team Powers of Pain. We all remember how that ended. But MSG shows, those Madison Square Garden house shows that they used to have from the late 80s up until like the mid-90s, I want to say. Pardon me. You would see Rockers and Brainbusters, and no, it wasn't a quick match. They go 15 minutes, maybe at the very least, 20, 25 minutes. There's just so many of them. You can even find them on YouTube. My brother used to do tape trading and would get these bootleg DVDs of these MSG shows, and I'd always want to watch the Rockers versus the Brainbusters. For some reason, I now thought of SummerSlam 89 with the Hart Foundation versus the Brainbusters. That was when the Busters were tag champs, and it wasn't even a title defense for whatever reason, but another story for another day. Rockers and Brainbusters, just watch a lot of those MSG matches. They even had a couple of matches on Saturday night's main event, and I believe actually that was the end for the Brainbusters come November of 89. They were actually on opposing teams at Survivor Series 89. Team Ultimate Warrior, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty taking on the Heenan family, Andre the Giant, Haku, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard. But the only caveat being, Tully was fired earlier that day for failing a drug test. And this was long, long, long before we ever had a wellness policy. So I don't know what grounds of termination. I don't know exactly what was standard operating procedure at the time for when somebody failed a drug test. You know, it sounded like he was just released right off the bat, just like that. So it makes it almost hard to believe. But in any event, Bobby Heenan took over, and Heenan actually had a similar ring gear. He had the one strap like Andre, and he had the boots that said BH, and he wore them just like Ric Flair did, the knee pads right below the knees. And Flair did that because he was embarrassed in his youth of the size of his calves. He wasn't strong in his lower body. He didn't have the biggest muscular calves to show off, so I think he was a little embarrassed, so that's why he wore the knee pads the way that he did. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard did the same thing. So anyways, Rockers and Brainbusters, I don't remember exactly how many times they battled. I was just, an infant when all this was going on, but I rewatched it years later. I'm like, damn, this is such good stuff. Moving on now, we had a singles feud. The rest of these are going to be singles. We'll include some of the women, too, a little bit later on. Greg the Hammer Valentine and Rugged Ronnie Garvin. This is pretty much 1989 right here for these two. Both grizzled veterans of their time, but still not old enough to be at retirement age. Both are still alive. They're probably well into their 70s, I want to say. Garvin was a submission specialist, as was Valentine. Garvin had a career in AWA. I think he was a former AWA champion. Valentine was competed, I believe, at the first Starrcade in that dog collar match with Roddy Piper. It was either Starrcade 83 or 84. I'm not exactly sure. That's a little before. That's probably long before my time, but just seen it on DVD documentaries. That's the only reason I'm aware of it. Valentine, being the consummate heel that he was, would do anything to cheat, as would all heels would do back then. So he would wear this sort of knee brace, or the shin guard. He wore the shin guard with one singular knee pad right above, I want to say, his right knee. He used it to his advantage, used it as a weapon. And not only that, he'd wear it and then actually do a knee drop while wearing it onto his opponent. And he probably got away with it a handful of times as long as the ref wasn't looking, or Jimmy Hart, his manager, was distracting the ref. Garvin, straight up, was like your old school wrestler from back in the day. A common John Smith, if you will. Trunks, boots, wrist tape, and a towel. Not really much else to show. There wasn't a whole lot of charisma going on in this feud, but that's okay. This is, these are guys that do all their talking in the ring. So they weren't the greatest talkers. I mean, Valentine was okay, but he had Jimmy Hart to back him up. Garvin, not the greatest talker in the world, but again, this isn't about talking. This is what they do in the ring. So they had a bunch of submission matches, and I think it was like May of '89 on Superstars or Wrestling Challenge, might have been Saturday Night's Main Event, where the stipulation was if Garvin lost, he was forced to retire from wrestling altogether. And that actually happened, and he couldn't wrestle throughout the summer of '89. He had to referee matches. In fact, he refereed the Greg Valentine Hercules match at SummerSlam '89, albeit Valentine won the match by hook or by crook. But I remember Garvin chastising Valentine over the mic and being the ring announcer and saying some, degrading him, I guess, because they were in the midst of a feud. Well, when Hercules came out, he praised him, to the heavens. So, great stuff there. As far as where it ended, it was the 1990 Royal Rumble. I think Garvin won the submission match. I think that's where it ended. It was like a 15-minute bout, and then Garvin left the company, and Valentine went on to do rhythm and blues, and kind of faded into obscurity not long after that. Let's go to 1995 for this next one. This is Razor Ramon and Double J Jeff Jarrett. Now, as I said in a previous video, I really enjoyed the match at the Royal Rumble. Intercontinental title match. It was probably that video. Razor and Double J, where Double J actually won the belt from Razor. Kind of under the flukiest of circumstances, but you listen to that video if you want me to talk more about it. WrestleMania 11 was not such a great match for them. They just didn't click. Didn't feel organic like the Rumble match did. And then they had that In Your House match with the roadie in Double J's corner, so it was like a 2-on-1 handicap match. It's just amazing that these two, on paper it doesn't look like it's going to be the greatest match of all time, but Razor, for a big guy, he's, like almost 6'7", 289 pounds. I knew he was 289, I forget his height. I'm just going to say 6'7". If I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me. I stand corrected. So, Razor, he's a big, burly guy, but he had a suave technical side to him that was sort of underscored in many of his matches. That's why he and Shawn Michaels worked so well together, because Shawn complemented that style. I talk too fast and I can't say it right, so forgive me. Double J was a great technical guy himself and was able to work the submission style very well for a guy of average size. So again, he wasn't like a big power guy like a Sid or a Diesel. And, the outside antics of the roadie, Road Dogg really came into play in a lot of their matches, so I enjoyed it. They even exchanged the belt on a couple of house shows. It was in May of '95. I think Razor won it in a ladder match on a Friday night, and then 2 nights later on a Sunday, I don't remember what cities they were in, at another house show, Double J got the belt back. Yeah, then Shawn was the one who ultimately took the belt from Double J. Great match at In Your House Lumberjacks, my first show, by the way. So, that was great stuff. Who else? Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. This goes back to WCW, but I think of the Attitude Era more for these two. If you watch Backlash 2000, that one wasn't so great. Judgment Day 2000 and their submission match I liked. SummerSlam 2000 and best 2 out of 3 falls match. That one was good. Could have been better, but their best encounter was Royal Rumble 2001, the ladder match for the IC title. And I've talked about that some, so I'm not going to get into a whole lot there. These two, no, even going back even further than Japan, than WCW, they battled it out in Japan. Pegasus Kid, and I don't remember if Chris Jericho had a name there, but Chris Benoit was known as Pegasus Kid, or Wild Pegasus. They both competed, I believe, in the Super J Cup tournament in 1994. Jericho told the story of how he couldn't fit the giant-ass trophy. Jericho won the Super J Cup back in 94. He couldn't fit the trophy in the overhead compartment in the airplane. So, I don't remember exactly how he got it back to Winnipeg, but he did. And Jericho's speed and agility combined with Benoit's technical prowess was a perfect match, and I'd go back and watch these two battle it out any day, anytime, anywhere. They were the best of friends, too. And while this is not related to the video, it's just kind of a little side story. Jericho mentioned this not long after Benoit died. Chris Benoit was a man who never showed a whole lot of emotion, and I know I'm going off topic here a little bit, but bear with me. Benoit never found a lot of things funny, but the strangest thing happened was Jericho was hyperventilating backstage, or he was very ill, he had a stomach ache, and I think he ultimately threw up. Benoit thought it was hilarious. He just laughed at him. Like it was the funniest thing he ever saw, like, you know, a stand-up comic doing slapstick or whatever. Benoit thought that was funny. And back then, Jericho had an inkling, or he said in an interview, this was on Larry King when he talked about it in 07, I should have had an inkling that something wasn't right with this guy, that he's laughing at someone when they're in this utmost pain. You know, you don't typically laugh at someone when, you know, they're in excruciating pain like that. You know, abdominal pain's no fun. I've been there, done that, and don't ask me how I survived, but I did. Another great match, let's see, another great pairing here. Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. This is, you know, getting to the main event level now. I want to say the first time I saw them battle it out is actually one of my all-time favorite pay-per-view, Ground Zero. In Your House, Ground Zero, September 1997. While it was a pretty stellar card, and it wasn't the most, you know, it wasn't, how should I say this? It wasn't a card full of 4 or 5-star matches, but the talent in of itself made it interesting that night, and I like the flow of things, which is why I love this pay-per-view, and it capped it off with this great match. Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, no titles on the line, no special stipulations. Vince on commentary, as you know, I love Vince McMahon on commentary, really made this match special for me. Shawn and Undertaker battling it up the ramp, and this was the very last time, by the way, they used the In Your House set. And they had black mats, black ring posts, but red, white, and blue ropes, so it was kind of a weird setup at ringside. I love going into detail about the physical aspect of wrestling here, as far as what the ring and the entryway look like. So Undertaker's beating up Shawn up the ramp, and eventually throws him into the flower bed right outside the house. And Shawn gets up from the flower bed, and he walks over to the door and knocks on it. And Vince jokingly says, "There's nobody home! There's nobody home! He's not going to answer the door!" Taker grabs him by the hair, and then he sucker punches, and Shawn does the best job selling that punch all the way down the ramp. He tumbles. Oh, boom, 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 boom. All the way down the ramp, he's going like this. Oh my God. It was like he was cartwheeling all the way down there, but Shawn knew how to sell everything, and that's what made him so great. That right there should have told you that these two are going to have a long history of great matches going forward. That match ended in a no contest, unfortunately, and Taker, I remember watching, he torpedoed out of the ring. He did a plancha and landed on top of all the other superstars on the outside who were trying to break them up, like the Godwins and the Headbangers, all these mid-carders out there. Then, of course, they had Hell in a Cell, Bad Blood 97, that's already been chronicled to death, Kane's debut, so I'm not going to get into that. Rumble of 98 was infamous because of Shawn's back injury that put him out of action for 4 years. Wasn't the greatest of their bouts, but it worked for the time that it was there. These two, I don't think, would ever cross paths again until, I want to say, 2009. It would be a good 11 years until they cross paths again. WrestleMania 25, one of my all-time favorite Mania matches, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. That was in Houston. That match went 36 minutes, and Sim Snuka was the cameraman in that match, Deuce from Deuce and Domino, Jimmy Snuka's son, Tamina's brother. Was supposed to catch the Undertaker when he came torpedoing outside the ring via a plancha, but he missed his cue, and then Taker almost twisted his neck on the outside, and so Sim Snuka had to sell the attack like he was actually being knocked out, it looked awful. The timing was off. It was botched. But that didn't take away from this great 5-star match that otherwise should have gotten a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer. He only gave it 4 3/4. I give it 5. It's a phenomenal match. I'd get up and clap as if I was really there watching it live. That was in Houston. Then they also had a match the following year at Mania in Phoenix, career versus streak. So Taker coming into that match was 17-0, and then he left that match, career versus streak match, 18-0. That match was great, but it didn't go quite as long as WrestleMania 25. I'm talking about the WrestleMania 26 match. And I like that one just a tad bit better. I give them both 5 stars. I don't do the 6-star rating. Meltzer did that for a Kenny Omega match, but I'm not going to get into that. I give them both 5 stars, but personally I think I liked WrestleMania 25 better for the action, though 26 had this added stipulation, so there's a little more excitement going into it. But damn, it's a close call there. Go back and watch both of those matches. They're some of my all-time favorites. WrestleMania 25 and 26, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. I will not mention Crown Jewel 2018, so we're going to stop right there. Moving on now, Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar. 2003 was a great year for these two. WrestleMania 19, I think it's a great match, but a lot of people say it would have been great if Lesnar didn't attempt the Shooting Star Press, which he botched. He was too far to be even doing it. If you go back and watch the end of that match, and Lesnar was doing lots of Shooting Star Presses and dark matches and OVW matches prior to Mania 19. If you ever watched the Mania of WrestleMania, that documentary filmed by Jesse Ventura, they show you Brock being attended to after the match. Both men got seriously hurt. They were both heavily concussed. Kurt's neck was killing him, so he had to postpone surgery in order to have this match, and then finally got the surgery after. And I don't think that did many favors for him going forward, because then he developed a painkiller addiction. But Brock, he was screaming backstage. He had no idea where he was. He doesn't even remember winning the belt. He hugged Kurt. Brock has no memory of this. Ask him now. He's gone. They take him backstage. He's sitting on a stretcher, and he goes, "Ah!" He's screaming because he doesn't know where the fuck he is. That's how badly a concussion can affect you. And this is before we had research on CTE or anything like that. So it's kind of scary thinking back to this time period and the stunts that they would pull off. And they're much safer now with headshots and no shots to the head. They don't do headshots. I shouldn't even say that. No shots to the head. No blows to the head. Just to the back. As lame as that might look, or as too fake and safe as you might deem it, but it's a necessity. So we have to go that route. So WrestleMania 19. Then they had that triple threat that had Big Show in it, and Big Show doesn't really do much to help, and that's where Angle got the belt back. They had a really great match, which is underrated, at SummerSlam 03. Angle was the face, and Lesnar was the heel. Angle retained the belt that night. Then they had that Iron Man match on SmackDown, which for the longest time was the last time the WWE title changed hands on SmackDown. I think it was until like 2017 when AJ Styles beat Jinder Mahal for the WWE title. And they went 60 minutes, and I thought that match was too one-sided for an Iron Man match. It felt like Brock was in control for the most part, and Angle looked like he was just struggling to get a move in edgewise. And it wasn't the best Iron Man match I'd ever seen. I prefer WrestleMania 12 and Judgment Day 2000, if you ask me. All right, Lesnar got the best of that one because Angle never got the belt back from Lesnar. I think that was actually Angle. No, it wasn't his last. That was his last WWE title. His world title run in 06 came later, but Lesnar was long gone from the company by that point. All right. Let's talk about some of the ladies here. Trish Stratus and Lita, very well documented feud. Two of my favorites of all time in the women's division. Their matches go back to the summer of 2000, and Trish was very green then, and Lita was even still green a little bit, though she had more wrestling experience than Trish had. Fully loaded, they had the TNA Hardys match with their respective females in their corners. Not in their corners, on their sides, actively participating in the match. They had a few matches on Raw, but it's mostly the bra and panty stuff that I'm not a big fan of. But then their matches got serious, I want to say in 01, when Trish got her first women's title. I remember they had a match, it was right after Survivor Series 01. It's kind of a throwaway match, there wasn't really much to talk about. They probably would have had better matches sooner if Lita didn't have that neck injury from filming Dark Angel. I want to say 04. Their best match was definitely December of 04. But before we get into that, we got to go back a month prior. November of 04 Survivor Series. They were scheduled to have a match, but never got underway, never really got going. The bell never sounded because Lita runs to the ring and attacks Trish. She didn't keep her cool. She punches her so hard she gives her a bloody nose, and Trish was deemed unable to compete. So Lita kind of threw away a women's title match on a pay-per-view, which nobody should do. As long as we're in kayfabe, we got to keep that in mind. It wasn't until December the 6th of 2004, the main event of Raw, the very first time we had a serious Raw women's main event. This is better than August 2000's Lita and Stephanie McMahon Helmsley, because it's Stephanie, so she's not a wrestler, of course. Not a great one, anyways. It had been building so much. Lita had a terrible 2004 with the pregnancy angle with Kane, and then she was there was some things going on with Matt Hardy, and then that was around the time, though, when the whole Lita Edge Matt Hardy love triangle was happening behind the scenes, so that's not in the kayfabe world of wrestling. But Lita won that match and fought. It was a very hard-fought victory, and she won it in dramatic fashion, and the fans were cheering. And actually, she was set to have a longer title reign, and I asked Trish about this last year at WrestleCon Philly when I met her. Lita, I think, was supposed to beat her. No, Trish was supposed to beat Lita at WrestleMania 21 and get the belt back, but of course that didn't happen. Lita tore her ACL at New Year's Revolution 2005 while trying to perform a running Luthez press off the ropes, off the apron, onto the ring floor, and then she tore her ACL in that match unexpectedly, and Trish, it was a rush finish. Trish hit her with a chick kick and got the belt back just like that. That was her 6th women's title. So then they had the Unforgiven 06 match, which was supposedly Trish's farewell match. Of course, that wasn't the last time we saw her. She's been back many times since. Lita left not long after because of the whole Matt Hardy Edge thing. So yeah, they had some battles, but most of them were kind of short-sighted and not well thought out, like the December 2004 Raw main event match. A better example I could give you is Bayley and Sasha Banks. I actually think those two had the best women's match of all time. NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1, the first TakeOver Brooklyn. I think there were like 4 of them. That was in August of 2015, so 10 years ago. It was an emotionally charged match. Dusty Rhodes had just passed away, and he was very influential in getting the women over, especially in NXT. They weren't handled too well in FCW. And Sasha played this ultimate bad girl, ultimate mean girl, with the, diamond rings and bragging about her lavish lifestyle. I think she entered the ring in the back seat of a Ford Escalade. Somebody was driving her. I thought she drove the Escalade herself, but no, she was a backseat passenger. And then Bayley was just this lovable fangirl that everyone could relate to, and she was a great role model for young girls at that time. But that all changed when she turned heel. So I never thought Bayley was going to turn heel, but she did, and did a magnificent job doing so. So Bayley and Sasha, oh man, did they carry each other so well in that match. It's a 5-star match, I would give it, and the only botch in that match was Bayley trying to go for a hurricanrana, but I think she might have mistimed it a little bit, and then she ended up landing on her neck. Ooh, that looked bad. Go back and watch that match, or either that or Sasha didn't go over in the hurricanrana, so to speak. She didn't flip over like she was supposed to. Somebody missed their cue, and it was botched. Best part was the emotion. They couldn't help but break kayfabe at the end. It was like a click curtain call, except this wasn't MSG. This was at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair came out to join them, and they, the 4 of them are best friends. They are the 4 horsewomen. There's this iconic picture all standing in the ring together, Bayley holding her belt, Sasha's holding her hand, and Becky and Charlotte are close by. And wish that kind of ended WrestleMania 35 when Becky won in the main event against Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, but they didn't go that route then. It would have been nice if we had, one of Charlotte could have been SmackDown Women's Champ, Becky could have been Raw Women's Champ, and then Bayley and Sasha could have walked out as Women's Tag Champs that night, and then they could have all held their belts, but wishful thinking never came to fruition. Speaking of NXT, we have Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, which is where that started, and then that eventually made it to the main roster. I want to say going back to 2015 for that one, up until, when was the last time Owens and Zayn had a match against each other? I want to say was it WrestleMania 37 in 2021? The post-COVID Mania? Yeah, for some reason they were feuding. They would feud inexplicably with each other. One minute they're best friends. They are best friends in real life, but one minute they're best friends in storyline, and the next minute they're the greatest of enemies. So Sami Zayn got signed before Kevin Owens did, and they've traveled up and down the road together, Japan, Mexico, England, Ring of Honor, you name it. Owens, in kayfabe, but I'm sure there's a little bit of reality to this, was a bit bitter because he didn't get hired at the same time his best friend did. And rightfully so, he'd probably feel that way. Oh, he got hired and I didn't. So, a little bit of jealousy, but not the worst I've seen of the green-eyed monster. And Zayn was making strides there, having his match bangers with Cesaro and other great people. NXT TakeOver Our Evolution from December of 2014. Sami Zayn defeated Adrian Neville to win his first and only NXT Championship. Kevin Owens debuted that night, defeated CJ Parker. In that match, Parker palm struck him and kind of gave him a cut right between his nose and his eye right here. That's neither here nor there. So Owens comes out to congratulate Zayn, claps for him, hugs him, raises his hand. They get out of the ring. Oh, clothesline. Totally. Nobody saw that coming. And that's a great swerve. And WWE is now big on swerves. And, they'll get you when you least expect it. Trust me. They got me. Especially with Cena earlier this year, Elimination Chamber. So he did a pop-up powerbomb onto the ring apron, which had a Minitron on the side. They were doing that a lot in the mid-2010s in WWE. Of course, they had this match at TakeOver Rival, where Owens said, "I will not face Sami Zayn unless it's for that NXT Championship." Zayn agreed to put the belt on the line, and he lost the belt after 62 days as champion, just a little over 2 months. That was actually his only title defense, to be honest. Owens wins it via referee stoppage. The referee decides Zayn is unable to compete, unable to continue in the match. But when that ending was so convoluted to me, because in the past when I've seen an ending like that, that does not equate the belt changing hands. That just means it's a no contest, so in the event of a draw, the belt stays with the champion who walked into that match. So that shouldn't have happened, but it did. Zayn never got the belt back, but then he got his comeuppance, I think, at Battleground 2016, and I don't have a great timeline for these two because it was kind of a crappy time period for wrestling anyways, but they always had great matches, and I always loved seeing Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn, so I'll leave it at that. Alright, there's only 3 more examples I want to get through. John Cena and Randy Orton's a great example. I'm not going to go into too much detail because people talk about this one a lot. They fought over 20 times. Fall of 09 was my favorite, from Breaking Point to Hell in a Cell and to the Bragging Rights Iron Man match. Though I hated Cena winning it at the end, he did, and obviously he was the biggest star in the company at the time and needed to go over in some big way, some big fashion. Sheamus versus Alberto Del Rio. This doesn't get talked about nearly enough. A lot of people didn't like their feud. I did. Now, while it wasn't the greatest feud as far as the storyline concept, but their matches are great. Del Rio and Sheamus are criminally underrated as in-ring performers. The summer of 2012, from Money in the Bank to SummerSlam to Night of Champions. My favorite's the Night of Champions. It was the blow-off to it. Sheamus's brute strength complemented Del Rio's agility, kind of like other people I've talked about on this list already. And I love the storyline where they try to they get Dave Otunga involved as a lawyer, and they try to get Sheamus's Bro Kick banned, and then at Night Champions, Booker T, the general manager, comes out and says the Bro Kick's been reinstated. There was no legal action to pursue in that matter. Otunga, I guess, wasn't present. But, it's just Sheamus can pull out a move just when you think his matches are getting stale and boring. He'll find a way to make it exciting, because Sheamus has just improved so much over time that I love watching Sheamus in the ring. I could, even to this day. Del Rio, can't say as much good things about him because he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth these days. He's still alive, but I haven't even been following what he's doing, so there's not much else I can say about Del Rio. The last example I'm going to give you is from 2 mid-carders who finally won world titles. One of them which won the WWE title in dramatic fashion later on in his career, and the other one won a world title via Money in the Bank cash-in. I'm talking about Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler. In this day and age, you'd be sick of watching these two wrestle each other. 27 times from 2009 to 2019, Kofi and Dolph have battled each other. And you can watch various episodes of Raw, SmackDown. I especially liked it in the summer and fall of 2010. They were battling over the Intercontinental title. Dolph won the belt in July of 2010 on SmackDown from Kofi. That was his first Intercontinental title run. Kofi was constantly challenging him to rematch after rematch after rematch. There was SummerSlam and the Night of Champions. Then he got Jack Swagger involved and became a triple threat at TLC in 2010. They had a very quick ladder match where Kofi Kingston and Jack Swagger were grabbing, they were playing tug of war with the belt, and then they dropped it. Ziggler almost missed his cue. He was supposed to catch it, but he didn't catch it till the belt was already on the ground. So come on, Dolph, you can do better than that. So Dolph won by hook or by crook. But their best match, in my opinion, and it's not Stomping Grounds 2019. That's one of the worst attendance pay-per-views, by the way. I'm talking about January 7th, 2011 on SmackDown for the Intercontinental title. Kofi beat Dolph. Dolph had Vicky Guerrero in his corner, and Vicky demanded a rematch, and Kofi beat him with this amazing high-flying crossbody. He used crossbodies here and there, but he already beat him once with the Trouble in Paradise and tried to beat him again with it, but it didn't work. And they were really building Dolph to the world title picture, so they had to get the IC belt off of Dolph and put it back on Kofi because they weren't going to push Kofi yet until 2019. So, anyways, that's all I got for you for today with these feuds, these common opponents. Let me know what you think. This has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.